Welcome back to Thriving on GLP-1s. I'm dietitian Megan, and today we are covering lesson 4, Macros 101. My goal is to break down the actual science of how your body uses food in a clear, simple way that builds confidence. If you've ever felt confused about carbs, protein, or fats, or unsure how to build a balanced plate with a smaller appetite, this lesson will give you the why behind what your body needs. This lesson builds on everything we've already talked about: protein, fiber, fullness, supporting your digestion, and helps you understand what each macronutrient actually does inside your body. Think of it like it's called Nutrition 101, something that will serve you whether you stay on a GLP-1 medication or eventually transition off. We eat two big categories of nutrients: macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients, carbs, protein, and fat, give your body energy and are the physical building materials that you need. They're called macro because they're nutrients you need in large amounts. They're also the only ones that contain calories, aka energy. Carbs contain 4 calories per gram. Protein also contains 4 calories per gram, and fat contains 9 calories per gram. Micronutrients are vitamins and minerals that are needed in smaller amounts, hence the term micro, and they don't provide your body with energy, but they do help you unlock energy. They turn the energy you eat into energy you use, and they help your nerves send signals, support your immune system, protect your bones, and keep your metabolism working smoothly. For example, vitamin B12 is often touted to give you energy. It's marketed as an energy boost, but it doesn't contain calories or energy. But it is an essential coenzyme needed for energy production. So that's why they can make those claims. But understanding that only macros provide actual energy through calories, and that vitamins and minerals help you unlock that energy, helps you not fall for inaccurate marketing, thinking that taking a B12 supplement is going to boost your energy if you're not eating enough, and helps you understand why you can't replace adequate eating with a multivitamin or a pill. When you eat, your body breaks food down into simple parts that it can use. Carbs become simple blood sugar, or glucose, your main form of quick energy and the preferred energy source of your body. Protein becomes amino acids, the building blocks for muscles, hormones, enzymes, and bones, like we discussed in lesson 2. And fat becomes fatty acids, which are long-lasting energy, structure, and support. Food isn't just calories in, it literally becomes you: your skin, your hair, your muscles, your bones, your hormones. So let's start with one of my favorite macronutrients that is so often misunderstood: carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are simply carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Don't worry, I won't make you draw the chemical makeup, but I think it's helpful for understanding them. They're often unfairly demonized and a really important macronutrient. Your body breaks down all carbs into single sugars, what looks like this glucose in this picture, and then all of these single sugars are converted into glucose. Glucose is the simplest, fastest fuel your cells can use. That's why we call it the energy currency of the body. Carbs are also often packaged with micronutrients and fiber, which is, if you remember, just a carb that we don't digest. So carbs aren't good or bad. They're simply just energy, and a form of energy that your body uses, prefers, and breaks down easily. Some cells in your body actually require glucose or very strongly prefer it. Your brain makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it uses 20 to 25% of your daily energy, which is a lot. Most of it comes from glucose. Red blood cells can only use glucose because they don't have mitochondria. And many nerve cells and immune cells work best when glucose is available because they need quick and efficient energy. This is why you feel clearer, steadier, and more energized when your body has enough carbs to meet those basic needs. Now, I'm not saying you're going to feel clearer, steadier when you're having too much carbohydrate intake, right? Too much sugar can lead to crashes and not feeling clearer and steadier, but adequate carbohydrates is really important. Other cells, like muscles, also perform best with glucose as their energy source. That doesn't mean that you can't run on fat. You certainly can, but you're going to perform best, especially in the gym or at an athletic event, if glucose is the main source of energy. Okay, so maybe you ate less today, you went longer between meals, you've been more active, or you're eating smaller portions. Your body has to find another way to keep your brain and your red blood cells fueled. Your body's really smart, so it shifts into backup metabolism. Two things happen. First, your liver starts turning fat into ketones. Ketones are made partly to replace glucose because they can cross into the brain, but also because your body needs carbohydrates to burn fat the normal way. You may have heard the phrase that fat burns in a carbohydrate flame. That simply means that carbohydrates help your body break down fat completely, and when carbs are low, your body can't finish that process. So, the byproduct is ketones, which is an alternative energy source. Ketones are your body's way of saying, okay, carbs are low, so let's make a different fuel so that the brain still gets what it needs. Your body also starts using protein for energy, converting amino acids into glucose, a process called gluconeogenesis, if you remember from previous lessons. These amino acids might come from food that you're eating, or if you're not eating enough, they might come from muscles, skin, immune cells, and organ tissues. This isn't harmful in short periods like an overnight fast, but when it lasts long term, it pulls protein away from the job it's meant to do, repairing tissues, supporting your muscles, making hormones, keeping your immune system strong and steady, and it uses the amino acids for fuel. This is one of the reasons that deep ketosis isn't an ideal state for most people, and not because ketones are bad, they're not. It's because using protein for energy means less protein is available for building, healing, and keeping you strong. Your body can run on ketones when needed, and that flexibility is amazing. But for most people, especially while losing weight or trying to feel energetic and steady, having enough carbohydrates to support normal fat metabolism and protect your muscles makes your whole system work more smoothly. All right, so all carbohydrates, like I mentioned, are made up of sugar units called saccharides. So monosaccharides are single sugars. They're glucose, galactose, and fructose. Disaccharides are paired sugars, like lactose in milk or sucrose in table sugar. They have only one bond to break. So if you remember the picture of glucose, it's just the two sugar molecules connected by one bond. And because of that, they're very quickly digested. Polysaccharides are really long chains of monosaccharides. These are found in things like oats, potatoes, beans, and whole grains. So these have many bonds that need to get broken down during digestion. So simple carbs give you quick energy. Complex carbs give you steadier or longer lasting energy. Not quite as long and steady as fat and protein, but longer than quick because they have more bonds to break. So we don't need to demonize mono or disaccharides like sucrose because at the end of the day, all carbs are going to be metabolized to single sugars. But what we can recognize is their differences. When I talk to my little girls about carb-containing foods, we use the term fast energy or slow energy. If they're doing sporting events, we want fast energy. And we talk about that. Okay, what's going to give us some fast energy to help you get through the second half of the soccer game? If it's breakfast, however, we talk about how only eating fast energy is going to leave them hungry and tired in an hour at school. And I ask them what we could add for some slow energy so that they have steady energy until lunch. When we look at carbs this way, it makes it easier to replace fear and guilt with recognition and intention, and ultimately building more balanced diets. Now, some might argue that carbs aren't an essential nutrient, that we can technically live without them, but carbs matter. It's extremely hard to meet our nutrient needs, especially fiber and phytonutrients, on a low-carb diet because they are found in so many nutrient-dense foods. Carbs are the preferred source of energy. They help your fat metabolize completely. They spare protein, they support our GI health, and they help us feel good. A healthy diet doesn't mean limiting carbs. It means adding protein and fat to carbs, choosing high fiber carbs most of the time, and eating the amount that keeps our energy and blood sugar steady. Remember, carbs aren't good or bad. They're just fuel, and your body knows exactly how to use that fuel. So speaking of adding to carbs, the next macronutrient is protein. Protein isn't just about muscles, although it does support muscle strength and repair, but protein also becomes the enzymes that digest your food, the hormones that regulate your cycle and metabolism, the antibodies that fight infection, and the neurotransmitters that support mood and focus. When you eat protein, your body breaks it down into amino acids, and your cells use those amino acids like building blocks. Remember from lesson 2, we talked about them being letters, right? And that each individual amino acid putting together creates proteins, which are like words, and then those are put together to create sentences, and then ultimately to create novels, right? Organs in our entire body. So every day your body is repairing, rebuilding, and replacing tissues, even on rest days. Even when you felt like you didn't do anything and you just laid on the couch all day, your body was busy using lots of amino acids. And we get amino acids from eating protein. So protein digestion starts the moment it hits your stomach. Stomach acid unfolds the different protein strands, and then the enzyme pepsin begins breaking them apart. And in your small intestine, enzymes finish that job, completely cutting the proteins into individual amino acids, the form that your body can actually absorb and use. And this is a big job, and one of the reasons that protein supports satiety, because it takes longer to do this, to digest the proteins. It's also why it supports weight loss, though, because not only does it impact appetite and satiety, but it also takes more energy to break down protein compared to carbs and fat. This is something that we call the thermic effect of food, and it's estimated to use up about 20 to 30% of the calories from protein just to digest the food with protein. So just to break that protein down uses up about 20 to 30% of the protein or the calories that you are getting from that protein. So comparatively, the thermic effect of food for carbs is about 5 to 10%, and fat, again, such an efficient nutrient, is only about 3%. Once absorbed, these amino acids are carried through your bloodstream and delivered wherever repair is needed. Maybe that's rebuilding muscle after a workout. Maybe it's making antibodies to fight off a cold. Maybe it's repairing a cut in your skin, healing tissues, or helping to produce hormones. Protein is constantly being used and recycled. Your body doesn't have a big storage tank, though, for protein. So it depends on regular intake to keep all of these processes running smoothly. Again, like we talked about in lesson 2, if you need a refresher on that, go back if you want to understand more about why we need protein consistently throughout the day. And again, when carbs are too low, your body may pull amino acids and convert them to glucose for energy. It works, but it means less protein is available for building, repairing, and supporting your body. And it's a pretty inefficient way to get energy. Right? If 20 to 30% of that energy is being used just to break down that protein, and then we're just converting that protein into glucose anyway, we might as well just eat the foods containing glucose or carbohydrates. And this is one of the reasons that balanced meals matter, right? We want each nutrient to be able to do its job efficiently, and we want to make that process more efficient in our bodies. As a quick recap from lesson 2, for most adults, a target between 1.2 and 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight works really well. That's about 100 to 130 grams a day for someone who weighs 180 pounds. If you're over 50 or training regularly, you may benefit from closer to like 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. In lesson 2, you determined your protein needs and hopefully tracked a little bit. This week would be a great time to reflect on how you're doing with protein, what percentage of your calories are coming from protein. Remember, I don't recommend going above 40% of your calories coming from protein, because at that point you're missing out on other vital nutrients, and protein is likely being used for fuel instead of building blocks. Most people do really well with about 25 to 30% of their calories coming from protein. But again, if your intake is lower, your calorie intake is lower, it might be helpful to utilize the percentages versus the grams. If your calorie intake is higher, then utilizing the grams can be helpful. So I would start with grams of 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, and then see how that fits in with your total calorie intake and if you need to shift and adjust a little bit. Because excess protein is either going to be used to make glucose if your body is needing quick energy, or it's going to be used as fat for energy storage if your body doesn't need a lot of energy at that moment. So speaking of fat, fat often gets misunderstood as well, but it plays several essential roles in our body. Chemically speaking, fat is made up of 3 fatty acids linked to a glycerol backbone. If you look at the image in red, this is the backbone, and each R represents a fatty acid chain, like the one in the image in black. So this is a short and condensed version, but each R would be quite long. When you eat fat, your body uses bile from your liver to break it into smaller droplets, so digestive enzymes can fully reach it and break it fully apart off of this glycerol backbone. Your fat digests more slowly than carbs and protein, and it's why it gives meals a lot of staying power. But it also might be why on a GLP-1 you're not tolerating it very well, because your digestion is already slowed. So then if you add a really slow digesting nutrient in there, you might notice that fat absorption or fat tolerance isn't great right now, depending on how you're tolerating your GLP-1. That should improve. But fat is still important. We still need fat. Even if it's not feeling great, we can decrease the amount you're eating, but we definitely need fat. It's an essential nutrient. So it keeps us satisfied longer. It helps our body absorb key vitamins, and it provides a slow, steady release of energy. So fat isn't something to fear. It's something your body uses every single day, and it's an efficient energy source. There are two main types of fat in our diets. There's saturated fats and unsaturated fats. Saturated fat simply means that those fatty acid chains, remember the three chains that are attached to that glycerol backbone, the R's in the red picture, don't have any double bonds. Now, you don't really need to understand what that means fully, but it essentially just means that they're fully saturated with hydrogen. So they don't have any double bonded carbons. Unsaturated fats mean that there is at least two double bonded carbons or at least a single double bond, right? And these double bonds occur, where these double bonds occur, tell us what type of fat it is. And some of these are essential. For example, omega-3 is simply means that on that fatty acid chain, the third to last carbon has a double bond. So that's an omega-3. On omega-6 is the sixth to last carbon has a double bond. Carbon length also determines the name and type of fat. And we're still learning more about all the various types of fat. There's new research coming out about saturated fat and whether the chain length of the different types of saturated fat matters. But in general, we need to make sure that we're meeting our essential fatty acid needs, which are, again, omega-3 and omega-6, because our bodies can't make them. So we need to aim to get most of our fat from unsaturated fat sources, and to keep our saturated fat a little bit more limited. The American Heart Association recommends no more than 6% of our calories coming from saturated fat, because saturated fat can have a negative impact on our heart health. Now, there is research coming out that maybe not all are created equal, but in general, again, we can make saturated fat. It's not considered essential. We can't make certain unsaturated fats. They are essential. We have to get them from our diet. So aiming to have more unsaturated fat sources in our diet is helpful. One last quick note about fat is trans fats. These were created by partially hydrogenating, aka by adding some hydrogens to unsaturated fatty acids, but not completely hydrogenating them. Okay, so essentially there were still double bonds present. The double bond was just in a different orientation, and that created trans fats. Now, these were banned in 2018, so there are no longer trans fats present in our food source. However, a lot of people misunderstand the labeling, and they think that hydrogenated oils mean partially hydrogenated oils, which is not the case anymore. Now, hydrogenated oils would mean fully hydrogenated oils. In other words, they are fully hydrogenated with hydrogen, and there are no more double bonds, which would mean that now these unsaturated fatty acid sources have been turned into saturated fatty acid sources. So if you see on a label hydrogenated oils, you don't need to be afraid that that means trans fats. It means saturated fats, because they're fully hydrogenated now, because we learned that trans fats are worse for our heart health than saturated fats. So the only reason I bring that up is because there's still a lot of information floating around about trans fats, especially on like social media. So you don't need to be afraid of trans fats. They were banned in 2018. Instead, just recognize that hydrogenated oils on labels would mean saturated fats. Those aren't necessarily bad, but we do want to limit them to about 6% of our calories to help us meet our nutrient needs from essential fatty acids, and also to help protect our heart, because as of right now, the data is showing that saturated fats do negatively impact LDL cholesterol and heart health. Now, again, new research is emerging. They may not all be created equal, but still, let's focus on getting the essential fatty acids. So fat is an efficient energy source with 9 calories per gram, but it does a lot more than just provide us energy. It helps our bodies absorb fat-soluble vitamins. These fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. These are the vitamins that support vision, immunity, bone health, Some of them are antioxidants, and they also support blood clotting, as well as various other roles in the body. So fat is also essential for hormone production. Our sex hormones and stress hormones, any signaling molecules depend on adequate dietary fat. If we aren't having enough, we will see impacts with that. And every cell in our body has a membrane made up largely of fatty acids. So when our meals are extremely low in fat, many people notice that they don't feel as satisfied, their energy dips faster, and nutrient absorption can be impacted. So small amounts of healthy fats, even 10 grams at each meal, can make a meaningful difference. If you aren't tolerating a lot of fat right now, just aim for about 10 grams of fat from some source. Maybe you're going to tolerate a little bit of dressing on your vegetables more than you're going to tolerate like a heavy fried food. Or maybe you would tolerate some chia seeds or something like that, or a little avocado. But try to add in some fat, at least 10 grams at each of your meals. Okay, so macronutrients work best when they're eaten together. One is not more important than another. It might seem that way, but in reality, they need each other. Each one has a job, and when all three show up on your plate, they make meals more balanced and sustainable. Carbs give you energy, fiber, and micronutrients. Proteins provide strength and structure. Fat slows digestion and helps with nutrient absorption. Together, they create meals that give you steady energy, comfortable digestion, and better satisfaction, and overall support your whole body. That's why I teach my clients nutrition by addition. I often say, eat what you want and add what's missing. One of the simplest ways to improve your nutrition, especially with a smaller appetite, is to think about what you can add. Add a source of protein for strength and steadiness. Add fiber-rich foods like fruits, vegetables, beans, or whole grains to support your digestion. Add color for antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. Add a source of healthy fats to help with fullness and vitamin absorption. You don't have to take anything away. When you add what's missing, you naturally displace eating too much of any one food. So I often highlight this with my clients of, okay, so you want some chocolate. If you're eating only chocolate for your snack, how much chocolate are you going to eat? Compare that to what if you're having chocolate and an apple and some almonds and maybe a protein shake? How much chocolate are you going to eat? We don't have to eliminate chocolate. When we add other foods to it, we're naturally going to eat less chocolate without having to completely restrict it or feel like we can't have it, demonize it, feel guilt around it. Nutrition by addition is a really great way to improve and maximize nutrient intake in our diets while also helping to maintain a healthy relationship with our food and feel confident instead of guilty around food. All right, micronutrients are the vitamins and minerals your body needs in smaller amounts. They support every system in your body. Again, they don't provide calories, but they do help turn food you eat into usable energy and help your cells to do their jobs. Micronutrients help with all sorts of things: immune function, bone strength, metabolism, nerve signaling, red blood cell production, hormone production, wound healing, antioxidants, just to name a few. So even though you only need them in small amounts, they make a really big difference in how you feel day to day. And if you have a deficiency, you will notice it. Your energy, your mood, your sleep, your immunity, and digestion all depend on having enough micronutrients. With smaller appetites, it can be easy to accidentally get low on certain vitamins and minerals, which is why balanced, nutrient-dense meals really matter. So let's talk first vitamins. There are two types of vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins need dietary fat to be absorbed. You'll find them in foods like eggs, dairy, leafy greens, and colorful produce. Even a small amount of fat, remember, 10 grams in a meal will help you absorb these vitamins. Water-soluble vitamins are the B vitamins and vitamin C. These aren't stored well in our body because they're water soluble. We don't store them with our fat. And this means that you need to be eating them regularly. So we need them every day for steady energy, healthy nerves, and strong immunity. You don't have to track these. Just aim for meals with all three macronutrients present in adequate amounts and color, and your body will usually get what it needs. Minerals play dozens of roles in our body. Some of the big players are iron, which helps move oxygen through our blood, magnesium, which supports sleep, stress, digestion, and hundreds of biochemical reactions, zinc, which supports immunity and healing, potassium helps regulate fluid balance, hydration, and nerve function. Calcium supports bones, muscles, and nerve signaling. And there's more. These nutrients are especially easy to underconsume when portions are smaller. So again, focusing on nutrient-dense foods helps support our bodies when our appetite is low. All right, phytonutrients are not technically a micronutrient, but I always put them in here because they're super important. So phytonutrients are natural compounds in plants that offer powerful health-supporting benefits. Again, they're not vitamins or minerals. We don't have a set amount that we need each day, and we don't have any deficiencies that we have identified, but they're still pretty powerful, and they're something we're still learning about. They help with reducing oxidative stress, supporting cellular healing. They may protect against long-term diseases over time, and there are thousands of them. So yes, it's still a new area of research. We're still learning about their benefits, but it's clear that they do have benefits. Different colors bring different advantages. Blue and purple contain anthocyanins that support brain and blood vessel health. Red foods contain lycopene that support heart and cell health. Orange and yellow contain carotenoids that support immunity and vision. Green provides lutein and chlorophyll-related compounds that support eye and cellular health. Even white foods, like garlic, contain compounds that support immunity. And this is just to name a few, right? There are other phytonutrients within each of these colors that also are incredibly supportive to our body. So you don't need to memorize any of this. Just remember that every color offers something different, and even small servings count. So include color as much as you can and get a variety of plants at every meal. This is not only going to help to maximize your phytonutrient intake, it's also going to help with fiber intake and variety of fiber, which will support our microbiome. Again, go back to lesson 3 if you need a refresher on that one. All right, so this week is about building awareness, not rules. On your worksheet, there's a 3-day tracker that you can use to see, are you getting enough protein, enough fiber, enough color, enough healthy fat? Tracking is just a tool for insight. I always tell my clients, this is just data. This is not judgment. This is not a scorecard. So if you're seeing that it's feeling like a scorecard, if it's causing you to have a lot of stress and anxiety, then maybe take a step back and maybe we're going to track in a different way. But if you can see it as just data, it's really helpful data. So grab your handout and start filling out your goals for the week and that tracker. If you want a more in-depth tracker, there's an optional week-long awareness tracker included in your resources. This would help you see grams of each micronutrient. So instead of just saying like, am I getting a fat source at each meal? This would be how many grams of fat am I getting at each meal? It's also going to help you see calories, water, movement. It doesn't have micronutrients on there because we usually cover our needs with adequate food and variety. If you are missing a whole food group, have allergies or intolerances, are really limited in how much you're able to tolerate right now, your calories are, below 1,500 calories, or if you have a history of nutrient deficiencies, like maybe anemia or a vitamin D deficiency, then we would want to look at your diet personally to ensure adequacy, but that's beyond the scope of an online group course. You can schedule a one-on-one call with me if you desire that level of detailed help, and you can look at specific nutrients of concern for you, but in general, this tracker doesn't have that. It's focused on macronutrients. All right. Remember, you don't have to overhaul your eating. You don't have to cut out the foods you enjoy. You can improve your health. You can keep your preferences. You can keep your cultural foods, your family favorites, and simply add what helps you feel nourished, satisfied, and steady. Eating what you love and adding what you need creates a pattern you can sustain. Whether that's during your GLP-1 journey or long after, that motto helps you build balanced plates. All right, so this week, building awareness around your macro and micro intake. And then next week, we're going to deep dive into blood sugar balance. So we will see you then. Have a great week and we'll talk soon.